you wear too long sleeves?
Oh, yes. I like to wear many layers, yes.
Why is it so hot in here? It's like winter.
That's why I got the air conditioner on. All right. Portrait of the classes. So we're going to try to get a general idea of what social class in the United States looks like. Okay, social class in the United States looks like. What I want you to do, prior to breaking these down, I want you to think of each of these social classes as subcultures or cultures in and of themselves. They have their own social norms a lot of times, okay, or variations of norms. They have their own expectations. They have their own rules that may differ from one to the next. We're all part of the American culture, right? But really, a lot of times we narrow down our bubble to our social class. We hang around the people that have the same amount of money as we do, and we have a tendency to cut ourselves off from everybody else, okay? So it kind of reminds me of, you guys know what movie this is? Land Before Time, right? You guys ever seen that? Three horns never play with long necks, right? You get to, there's a particular class, it's called the WASP. We're going to see them a little bit later in our documentary of people like us. WASP stands for White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. They're assumed to be a part of the one percenters, the top, right? If you're a part of the WASP class, you don't, hang around with people that are even of like upper middle class people, right? They're lower than you, right? They're not as good as you, okay? So you just don't spend that much time with them, okay? All right, so we'll start off with giving you some imagery, some occupations, different types of people, and I want you to think about what social class they come from. Our options today are upper, lower middle, working class, and lower. Sound good? So that's your options. Upper, lower, middle, working class, and lower class. So here we have teacher, right? And this is not doctor, this is nurse. Right? So these two occupations, which of those social classes do they fall into? Right? Wish we could all be like Chuck Norris here. Nail that student without even looking at him. Jason, what do you think?
He's a regular teacher, right?
He's a regular teacher.
Working?
A working class, right? It's a good guess. It's not working class. You want to take another guess?
And then the other one's a nurse.
It is a nurse.
Lower middle.
It'd be lower middle. Yeah, lower middle class, right? One thing that you're taking a look at there, I know that maybe you may be thinking about income, but you got to think about the education attainment dictates a little bit of that and increases it to a lower middle. Now this one is a little bit of a conundrum because if you actually know where the movie is that comes from this, and you realize that it isn't exactly the way it appears. So if you just see this particular person, does anybody know what movie it comes from? No? Okay. That helps. What's your assumption here? Upper, right? It is upper, right? The top 1%.
Wait, what movie is it?
It's called, I believe it's Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh.
Right? And I believe she was like down at the bottom, right? And then somehow she met somebody, and then up the top 1%, she became that, like married into it or something like that. I haven't seen the movie. That's what I just heard. Okay? But upper is somebody that has a history, and they've been rich and wealthy for a long time. Sound good? They've been rich and they've been wealthy for a long time. All right, what about this one? We've got one really long yacht here.
Oh, that's a yacht? That's not a cruise ship?
Yeah, that would be a yacht. Upper upper is the assumption, right? But it's actually not upper upper. We think that if it's at the top, then they have to have the most money, okay? But that's not really the way it works, okay? This would actually be lower upper, and this is what they call nouveau riche or new money. So you can be even wealthier than somebody that's at the very top, but the idea is that you haven't been there long enough to acquire the norms of being at the very top. So this would be lower upper, okay? This one, I know it's a picture from, a ways away, but we're going to make the assumption that all of these houses look exactly the same. Your option is what side you want to put the garage. Do you want it on the left side of the house or do you want it on the right side of the house? But pretty much everything else is exactly the same. So what type of community would this be labeled? Any idea? I'd probably take two answers here. Ms. Beck?
Lower middle?
It'd probably be lower middle or possibly working class. Right? This? Ms. King?
What are they again?
You've got upper upper, lower upper, upper middle, lower middle, working class, and lower class.
Lower class.
Yes. Ms. Brown?
It's not Bob Builder,
It's not Bob the Builder you remember?
No.
Yeah, it's gotten so much cooler. I've seen all the different variations of Bob the Builder. It's working class, right? However, Bob the Builder is kind of an interesting situation, right? We've got to assume that it would be working class if he was a laborer on a part of a crew, like a construction crew. But what happens if you're actually Bob the Builder and you own the construction company, right? What happens to your social class then? It starts to go up. Bob the Builder is really, if he's the construction crew member, he's part of the working class. But if he's owner of the construction business, then he's probably upper middle class, right? Upper middle? Yeah. What I was trying to get at with this particular image was that it's got a history of prestige and it's been there for a long time, and so I was trying to get, upper, right? This? So this would be,
that and not like cave in your roof.
I don't know.
I think it's caving.
It's not on the roof, it's in between the trees. It's got this line between the trees here. So that'd be lower class.
You have
Okay.
seven.
Alright, first thing, I think we mentioned this yesterday at the beginning of the class, differentiating wealth and income. Wealth is a person's net worth. The people at the top, the upper upper, the lower upper, they have a lot of wealth, right? Their net worth is really, really high, okay? People down at the bottom, like the imagery here for you as high school students, right? Going into college, you have a net worth of what? Not much, right? Here are a few, for a lot of us that go into college, our net worth all of a sudden goes into the negative, right? Because of the amount of debt we acquire by going to college. Hopefully that's not the case for you guys, okay? Income is flow of money, and so that means, how much do I earn on a yearly basis, okay? So we can't necessarily say that social class is solely based off of income, because if we do happen to approach it that way, a lot of people have a negative wealth, negative net income, or negative net worth, but they have a decent income that they have coming in. But just the amount of debt, the money that they spend, it doesn't increase their wealth because of the decisions that they're making. So you got to be careful with that, okay? All right, let's break down each of the social classes. Start with the upper class. Sometimes the text and the handouts that you have in front of you are labeled as the capitalists. This kind of refers back to Karl Marx, those that own the means of production. It is very small, again, sometimes referred to as the 1%ers. It contains the richest, somewhat. We'll have an exception to that in a second. Most powerful people of the land. And I like this analogy or metaphor. Like wine, they must age a little bit in order for you to be there. It's old money, turned to old money. You can't have, all of a sudden be one of these. You can't be Mark Zuckerberg, right? And create Facebook, and all of a sudden now you've got all this money and be part of the upper class because you haven't been there long enough. You haven't been socialized in the upper class. Okay? Remember WASP out to the side, it's an acronym again, WASP, White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. That's the idea here. Who's this guy? What's that?
James Gatz.
Yes. The Great Gatsby, right? Again, I'm going to post them, so you have to go back and look at them there. They'll be on the website. You don't have to write this down, but again, I think I shared this with you yesterday. The sliver at the top of the capitalist class, a tiny 1/10 of 1%, so 0.1% of the U.S. population is worth more than the entire bottom 90% of the country. Right? How much money do they have? They have a lot of money. Right? An exponentially greater amount of money. The lower upper class, they're called the nouveau rich or new money. They may have, like I said, the better toys because of how much money they have, but they lack the right breeding because they haven't been in that environment long enough. A few years ago, I think this was before Donald Trump was elected president, people came out and said that there's this book that lists the people that are a part of the upper class, the elite, right? And Donald Trump's name wasn't in it, and he got upset. And he made the comment, or he was actually asked about the situation, and he made the comment, well, I may not be in there, but my children will be in there. Kind of reiterates this idea of the difference between upper and lower upper, right? So Donald Trump would be identified as lower upper, and then his children would be able to transition because they've been socialized with a life of money, and they've been able to infiltrate and develop relationships with those people that are wealthy, that have been there for a while, right? So it's a little bit different there. The upper class influence both upper, lower upper. You have, they have so much money that they have a lot of power that goes along with it, okay? And it goes along with, like, foreign trade policies. It's huge. Job opportunities for many others, okay? This particular section here, it's kind of eye-opening. One decision made by one of these people in the top 1%, what does that do for, thousands, tens of thousands of other people? It can either create jobs for them, and they could, live a lower middle class type of lifestyle because of one decision made by one of these people. Or the other way it can happen, right? If Zuckerberg decides to take out one section of Facebook, what does that do? It takes, hundreds, thousands of jobs away from some people as well, right? So it's crazy, the influence that the upper class happens to have. The super PACs are like these political organizations that, fuel candidates for political positions. And these super PACs, it's where the money's at, right? There's a ton of money when it comes to political campaigning. And the more money you have, the more influence you have there, okay? All right, moving on down the social class ladder, you have the upper middle class. These are high-income business professional families, like doctors, like House here, right? Lawyers, business managers. I want you to think about the level of education that they have to obtain to fulfill these particular positions. And so it's the class that's most influenced by educational achievement. These people, from their perspective, from our perspective, we look at them and we say they have made it. They have fulfilled the American dream. They have used the institutionalized means. They have used education to achieve the American dream here in this particular case, right? So they have followed the rules, and now they have a good life, right? The upper middle class, again, makes up about 15% of the population. With that said, when we go through our elementary schools, what's the idea? It's communicated to us as young students. It's communicated that how many of us are going to be able to make it. All of us are going to be able to make it. All you have to do is put forth effort. But only 15% of the population actually makes it to this particular point. Sound good? So there's some separation between what is communicated and ideal and real here in this situation. Lower middle class, they share the same values of the upper middle class. The reason why they share the same values is because they want to get up one more rung up into the upper middle class. They have a tendency to be more average income people. However, most of the time, not likely it does happen, but most of the time it's not manual labor. They have a tendency to be, instead of blue collar type of jobs, they would be more white collar jobs. What differs between blue collar and white collar? Blue collar is kind of like I'm wearing jeans to work, right? Maybe a polo shirt or something like that. But I'm going to be not sitting behind a desk all day. I'm going to be doing something else, right? For a white collar job, that's a shirt and tie type of job. That's a sitting behind a desk or a computer and doing work that way, okay? Or communications through using the internet, telephone, making business deals, something like that. Okay, a white collar job. Again, lower middle class, they do value hard work, and they value hard work because they think that is the means by which they're going to be able to have social mobility. And it is a bit larger, 34% of the population. They have a tendency to be of this political party, goes along with the hard work. What would that be? They have a tendency to be Republicans. Right? The trend is the farther that you go up the social class ladder, the more likely you are to be conservative in your political affiliations. The more likely you go down the social class ladder, more likely you are to see more liberal approaches to your political affiliations. Now, there are exceptions to that. Sometimes you get these upper middle class people that because of their knowledge and awareness and education, sometimes it does open them up to certain types of liberal social practices. And then in this last election that you saw, the Republican Trump party was able to get a lot of votes from the working class people, which usually has a tendency to go towards more of the Democrat liberal political party. The working class, they don't consider themselves to be low class, so they've really created their own, niche. We call ourselves working class, right? High percentage of non-whites and less educated people. They lack social mobility, right? Lack social mobility, meaning that their wealth doesn't necessarily ever increase based off of decisions that they make or based off of social situations that they are in where it's outside of their control to acquire wealth. Okay, made up of 30% of the population. A lot of times they walk around and they give themselves a lot of pride, saying that who runs America, who makes America go? It's us, the working class. We're the ones that really do all the work, right? It's not those people that are up there owning the business. They don't do any of the work. We're the ones that do all the work. We're the working class people. Okay. Two more groups. You have the working poor. Makes up 15% of the population. They work at very low-skilled, unskilled jobs, low-paying, often temporary. Many are functionally illiterate, meaning they struggle with the ability to read. They have a tendency to be high school dropouts and fatalistic. What does it mean to be fatalistic? It's this idea of culture of victimization, that they are the victims, right? And things are outside of their control. So being in this semester, we talk about internal, external locus control. And so this would be one where they have an external locus control. Last one, the underclass. In an old textbook that I had, they were described as the disreputable poor and virtually worthless on the labor market. virtually worthless in terms of power and prestige. Okay? And again, they have a tendency to be fatalistic as well. Now, again, this is more from when it says worthless, it's a little bit harsh, isn't it? When it comes to describing somebody as you're just worthless when it comes to what do you provide for society in which we live. And that's really from the functionalist perspective, right? Herbert Spencer-esque type of stuff. When he talks about the poor should not have any social programs given to them. Because from his mindset again, they should inevitably die off. Pretty harsh stuff. Okay? We already talked a little bit about political behavior. Go up, have a tendency to be more Republican, more conservative. Go down, have a tendency to be more liberal, democratic. Marital stability, the higher that you go up the social class ladder, less divorce rates, decreased divorce rates. You go down, you have increased divorce rates. A lot of times finances is a big part of that. Religious affiliation, when you go up the social class ladder, your church that you attend usually has a tendency to be more conservative and a little bit quieter of an atmosphere. When you go down the social class ladder, the churches and the congregations that they become a part of have a tendency to be a little bit louder and a little bit more active and outgoing. Right? Educational achievement. The expectations of the upper middle class is much higher in education. We mentioned this before. You go down the social class ladder, education is not held to, isn't emphasized as much. Okay, health. You have better health when you go up the social class ladder. That's because of three different things. One is access to health care, right? Number two, those at the bottom have a tendency to eat, unhealthy foods, right? And then they also have a tendency to abuse drugs and alcohol much more than those at the top of the social class ladder. And their sexual behavior has a tendency to be a little bit more dangerous in comparison to those at the top of the level there as well. Okay, and think about stress, right? Stress decreases as you go up for the most part. Right? Those at the bottom of the social class ladder have more stress. Right? That leads to, over the course of time, your body's going to wear down, and life expectancy is going to drop. Right? So there's a strong correlation between life expectancy and social class. Values and attitudes, we've already talked about this. With high-income families, they teach creativity and good judgment. Low-income families, they have a tendency to teach conformity. If you go up the social class ladder, you have a tendency to have an internal locus of control. You take responsibility for what happens to you. You go down the social class ladder, you have a tendency to be fatalistic. What happens to you, it's just bad luck. Right? It's things that are outside of your control. Okay? Criminal behavior. White-collar crime, usually you don't think of it all that much because those things are settled outside of court, resolved that way. The street crime that happens at the lower social classes, you have a tendency to end up in prison or in jail that way. Sound good? So you can see a couple different areas in which social class does have an effect on the outcome of our lives. Any thoughts or questions before we finish up today?